Hello and welcome to Miniature Painting with the Jolly Good Giant. I'm your host, the Jolly Good Giant. Today I'm going to be showing you how to paint up two different styles of Reaper's Bones Large Earth Elementals. What I call Bright Core and Gemstone. So this is an example of a Poison Core Elemental. Sorry if the lighting's bad. Hopefully I can edit this later and lighten it up. I started with some base greens and very bright greens, and I got a little darker until I came out with a core crust. Same thing here. This one's a dark magic core, and I did the same thing. Over here, I have a sapphire gemstone elemental, and here I have a emerald gemstone elemental. So I'm going to show you how to do a volcanic core elemental and an amethyst sapphire, amethyst gemstone elemental. And now let's get going. So to save time, I went ahead and did the base coat of, I used Full-Coat Multi-Surface Bumblebee paint. I did 2 coats on this, and then I went over and touched up here and there. And on the amethyst gemstone elemental, I went and did a base coat of Full-Coat Perfect Purple, and then I went in a few spots I did some of the fluorescent glow purple and some of the GP purple from Cream Coat, just to do some highlight effects in different spots around there. And now I'm going to get started. I'm going to use Nectarine, Applebear Multi-Surface Nectarine is my next color on the Volcanic Bright Core. And I don't want to completely cover all the yellow, but I'm going to do dry brush style over the yellow. I still want to leave some of the cracks with the yellow in it. I'm actually going to kind of do like a scatter sort of effect, because I want the yellow and the orange to show through in the end. And I will be honest, it would be easier if you painted this model in the 4 separate pieces that it comes in. Also, whenever you get a Reaper Bones model, and even the metal models, you should completely wash the model in with dish soap and water and a toothbrush. I scrubbed all these down before I applied paint to them, so the paint adheres better. So when you're doing a bright core, that's the opposite of doing regular dry brushing. Normally when you do dry brush, or when I do dry brush, I start with darker colors and I go lighter. But with bright cores, you want to go lightest and then go darker. And again, I don't need to completely cover everything on this. I'm just going to go a little sporadic, because I'm going to use another shade of orange. It's slightly darker, Cream Coat Tangerine, to sort of mix in with them. When I did the other 4 models, I did those in pieces, and I just got a little ahead of myself when I was doing these 2, prepping them, and I regretted it afterward. My brush, I'm using a number 4 flat brush, also from Plaid. All my supplies are Plaid supplies. And if you'll notice, there's even a T-Rex skeleton in the shoulder here. I'm just going to brush over that and kind of ignore it, but something you can highlight when you're doing this model yourself. It's a really fun model to do. As you can see, I enjoy doing it. I've done a few others. I think this is one of the first Reaper models I've ever done, ever did, when I first started doing models again. Miniatures. WizKids also makes an Earth Elemental that's not too bad. It's a little more difficult to paint. I have an example one around I can show you that I painted in a similar style, Poison Core, which is why I decided to go with the Reaper, because like I said, I think they're easier to paint, and honestly I think they're a little cooler looking. I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying I'm going to move on to the Amethyst. If you'll notice, I'm using a laundry detergent cup as my rinse cup. That way I don't accidentally confuse my drinking cup with my rinse cup, which I hear happens quite a bit with other painters. This is a Poison Core Medium Earth Elemental from WizKids. Similar style painting, but like I said, I'm a fan of this model more, so I'll leave them there for now. So I'll give that a few minutes to dry. Put that back. So over here, I've already gone over it with 3 different colors of purple. Use this as a base, and I highlighted some arms to be different parts of the stone to be lighter purple, and then an even lighter purple. So now I'm going to go over with 1 coat of what I call tinted sealer. To make tinted sealer, I use Folk Art Ultra Dye mixed with Ultra Mod Podge and regular Mod Podge. 1 part of each. That's how I get tinted sealers. I'm actually going to use a slightly bigger brush for this. I just want to completely coat the whole miniature. It'll give it a nice glossy look. This one I want to definitely wet brush. I want to get as much on here as I can to make sure I don't miss any spots. And then, after I'm fairly certain I have everything, I can move stuff around where it's heavier to thinner spots to help it dry quicker. Also, be sure when you're painting your models and it's not completely put together, make sure you avoid the spots where you have to glue. You don't want to get paint in there, because then you're going to paint and not to the actual model, and it'll just come apart later. Thing I really like about tinted sealers is it's a sealer, so I don't need to seal it after I'm done. Once my very top coat, this will not be my top coat by the way, I do a coat of this, then I'm going to use a coat of color shift paint, color flash paint, then I'm going to go over with 2 or 3 more coats of tinted sealer, and that will be my Amethyst Gemstone Elemental. I was really liking the emerald one the most, but I'm starting to think this purple one's going to be pretty cool too, so normally when I would be painting a miniature, I'd be using some poster tacky and tack it to the top of a medicine bottle, but unfortunately I don't have any poster tacky around. I didn't realize I ran out, so that's why I'm holding it with my hand. Alright, so we'll let that dry. Work on this. See the dragon in the back here? That's going off to Plaid, and I believe they're doing that as a giveaway or prize for something. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but that's a Reaper Clear Bones Copper Dragon. And I used tinted sealers on that, and I also used some metallic emerald and a little bit of treasure gold blue for the eyes. And it was really fun to paint. I will say, if you're going to paint a clear figure using the tinted sealers, it's kind of like doing a bright core. You want to do the lighter colors first, and they'll show up underneath of the darker colors. It's very difficult to paint the lighter color over top of a darker color with the tinted sealer and have it show through. I'll let that sit and dry. It looks like my lava core elemental is mostly dry, and I'm going to use this wider brush still. Actually, I'm going to use something in between the two brushes. Next color I'm going to use is the Delta Cream Coat Tangerine. I'm going to lightly dry brush that over top of the yellow, the Bumblebee Yellow, and the Nectarine Orange. I guess not too lightly. Went on there a little heavier than I intended, but I like the way it looks, so I'm going to keep going. That's the thing about painting miniatures. Nobody knows you made a mistake unless you tell them you made a mistake, because they are all how you want to paint them. Gonna get a little closer on the arm there. Closer to the arm socket. Alright, give that a few minutes to dry. Alright, so the amethyst tinted, the tinted sealer on the amethyst is still taking a few minutes to dry, so we're going to go ahead onto the bright core lava core, rather, elemental. Do a little bit of multi-surface, apple barrel multi-surface candy apple red. And we're gonna do the same thing. A little bit lighter this time though. Than I did with the orange. Do a little bit of swirl in there so I get some reddened spots so it shows up later after I go over the next two coats. And while we wait for that to dry, that'll still probably dry quicker than the amethyst elemental, because we went on brush that on wet style pretty heavily. It takes a little bit longer to dry. Should we put our cap back on our paint? Next paint that I'm going to use for the lava core elemental, excuse me, is called a Folk Art Painted Finishes, and then they have actually three different kinds with two different colors that I'm aware of. So this is the rust set. There's a lighter orangier sort of rust, and then there's a darker browner blackish sort of rust. So you do the two of them together to create a rust effect, but I like using it because it's got granules in it that look like dirt or gravel for bases on miniatures, but I also think it's going to give it a great lava core effect on this. I just used straight up pure black, multi-surface black on both of these, and then I went over them with a light gray, so this is going to look slightly different, but I think it's going to look pretty awesome. So I didn't shake that good enough. Definitely want to shake up tinted sealers fairly well because the particles tend to settle. I'm just going to use what's in my cap. And I'm actually going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to go back to my number 4 flat. Which is, actually I probably use number 4 flat more than any other brush when I do miniature painting. And sometimes I use a number 1 liner. I use a number 1 liner quite a bit too, but number 4 flat usually. So again, lightly brush it on. We don't want to completely cover all the other colors. I want to show through a little bit here and there. Some of these more outcropping chunks of stone will make darker because they will probably be cooler than the stuff lower and deeper into the core. Of the monster. Yeah, no, I made a funny voice there. It's another good reason to use a medicine bottle, old medicine bottle. I use like a 60 Dramamine bottle usually with the poster tacky on it, because it keeps you from smudging your paint, rubbing your paint off your model before it's completely finished and sealed. That can be very frustrating. Believe you me. Not quite as frustrating as accidentally getting glitter on it, trying to figure out what the glitter came from, like a I don't even want to get into it. Never mind. Again, I'm not going to go completely crazy heavy on this because, for one, I'm going to do another shade over the still, but at the same time, I also want that bright core to show up. Fortunately, with the other two, even though they look pretty good, I don't know how well you can tell on camera because I know my lighting isn't great, and I'm hoping the young woman that's going to be doing the editing on my video can brighten it up a little bit. But I feel like the core on this lava one is going to be super bright, which is really what I want to go for. So I accidentally filled in the eyes a little too much. Well, it doesn't really have eyes, but I covered up the spot where the eyes would be. I wanted to keep those kind of bright core, bright yellow, but oh well. And I mean, that almost looks really good the way it is. I could conceivably leave them painted just to that level, but I'm going to take them one step farther and go a little darker in some spots after I do this arm a little bit. Yep, I'm liking the way that looks. I hope you do too. Jeez, I'm really tempted to leave it just the way it is. I can see that our sapphire gemstone, not sapphire, rather amethyst gemstone elemental isn't quite dry yet, but it's very close. We could probably go over the spread this out a little bit, thin it out. Could probably go over it with the color shift, color flash paint in just a moment. Might as well finish up the lava core one. Color flash paint will dry quickly too. It's a very thin top coat usually, so hopefully that won't be too boring for you. That's another reason I was trying to do two figures today, to try to go back and forth. While one was drying, I could work on the other one, but the tinted sealer's not working with me today. So I'm going to use the darker rust. Again, I shook it up pretty good. I have my textured stuff down here on the bottom. And I'm probably going to go through, and you may be able to tell that I painted the bases on these two already. But it was just to, that I got to go back and touch it up. So, do this. That's very dark. I'm kind of wishing I left it the way it had been. Oh, that's not bad. If you ever do a spot that's too heavy when you're doing dry brush, you can quickly get your brush wet, dry most of it off, go on that one spot again lightly and thin it out again before it dries. Even after it dries, if you do it relatively quickly. Yep, actually, that works. I like it. I'm gonna do the same thing with the arm here. Cool. I'll let that dry for a few minutes, and while that's drying, I'm gonna work on apply the flash metallic purple flash metallic coat to the top of the amethyst elemental. And then while that coat dries, I will go back and do a sealer on top of the lava core elemental after I glue his arm on. For applying the flash metallic color shift paint, I'm going to use a wider brush again because I want to coat. I tried this a few different times, and I find a larger coat is better than a smaller coat. Cover as much as the elemental as you can. Even the different colors will still show through. So again, I'm not going on heavy. I'm doing like a light dry brush kind of painting. I can feel still a little bit tacky. I probably could have let it sit for another 30 minutes before applying this. So that's the little bit of a setback with this painting with tinted sealers. You really need to make sure each coat is thoroughly dried in between, but the effects at the end are just awesome. And you can see the dragon there, the two gemstone elementals that I already did as examples. Then I have a gelatinous cube here that I painted using tinted sealers as well. So the inside pops out. You can paint that separately. And tinted sealer on a gelatinous cube is a good, fun start if you want to practice using tinted sealers. Again, to make a tinted sealer, use 1 part Ultra Mod Podge. I use the matte. 1 part regular Mod Podge. And then 1 part Folk Art Ultra Dye, whatever color you want to use. As you can see here, I've used Venom, Emerald City, I believe it's called. One of these is Solar, one of them is Sunburst, I think. I forget. Solar. Then there's different shades going down the line. I can't remember the names of all of them. I'm sorry. Off the top of my head. Wasn't really plugging the tinted sealers today so much. I'll put that down and let them dry. I don't know if you can see the difference already between the two. I can see it, but it's right in front of me, so. But once we get this on and then get this coat on and then get a couple more coats of the tinted sealer, it'll really give it a little more depth to it. So the color shift paint is underneath. And it gives it a little bit of a, like I said, a depth. So I'm going to give those two pieces a few minutes to dry. Close this up. I'm going to use the same brush to apply the Mod Podge Ultra to the Lava Core Elemental. But before I do that, I'm going to clean my brush. Excuse me. So I'm using Plaid Brush Plus. So I rinsed my brush off. I work a little bit of this brush cleaner in here. I think it says you wait 5 to 10 minutes. Let me read the actual directions real quick. 15 minutes. But I found that when you don't drop the brush on the floor, just a few minutes works fine. So I work that in. I'm going to rinse it out and dry the brush. And it gets all the rest of the paint out of there nicely. It also helps you work your brushes back into a nice tip. And I'll use that again at the end when I'm done painting with all the 3 or 4 brushes that I'm using today. So that's done. Take the cap off my Mod Podge. Make sure I don't have any brush cleaner on my hands because I don't want to mess up my miniature. Oh, I skipped a step. I actually have... I'm going to use this. I'm going to use the Tinted Sealer, the darker, for the base on the miniature. I'm going to use number 4 flat brush again. The bright side of using the same paint for the base as the top, as the last coat of paint, is that it's not going to be a big deal if I get a little on the model because it's already there. And it won't look funny. Alright, I'm going to give it another minute or 2 to dry. I'm not going to go on quite so heavy as I did when I was doing the tinted sealer on the Sapphire Elemental. I'm going to do the arm first on this since I know it's completely dry because I didn't have to touch up any base on the arm. And I'll just glue the arm on after this is dry. They do make a gloss version too if you're trying to make a more shiny miniature. I prefer to only do that if I'm going for a wet effect or a shiny effect. Like the actually for these tinted sealers, I use the gloss ultra matte and I use gloss regular matte, gloss regular Mod Podge. Sheesh. I'm much better at painting than I am explaining how to paint. At least on video. I didn't realize I pulled that out of the camera view. Sorry about that. As soon as that dries, I glue the arm on and just attach to the base. I was going to do bases too, but I felt like that would make the length of the video way too long, and actually I already did the bases, but I didn't like the way most of them came out, so there's that. I can show you an example of one of them that I did that I actually really liked the way it came out, and that would be the Poison Core Elemental base. I used some beads from Michaels that are just sharp cones, and used some Model Magic air dry clay. And I also used a piece of blue rigid foam that I cut to be the mound here, and I covered it with the air dry clay. Once the air dry clay dried, I popped off the clay, glued it underneath, pulled out all the spikes that I had stuck into it, super glued them all in, and then I painted the different textures on there. But this would have, if I hadn't already glued it to the base, would have just sat right on there in the middle and without all the spikes coming up. But really wasn't what this video was supposed to be about, so I decided not to do it. Alright, gonna do another coat of purple tinted sealer. Do it a little bit thinner this time, so maybe it'll dry a little quicker. Thinner coats dry quicker, and you can paint again, just like any other kind of painting. And when you're doing your model, if you decide that it's not shiny enough for you, you can always add another coat of the Flash Metallic. And again, this particular model has a T-Rex skeleton in it, which you could highlight if you wanted to. The WizKids model has some clear crystals, but I just painted over them, this here and here. And I want to say in the back of the arm here we're clear, but I just painted over it to give it a uniform effect. Uniform appearance, rather. Actually, I have an example of another gemstone elemental I did that I was originally going to use in this video as an example, but I didn't really like the way it came out. I didn't feel like it showed off the gemstone effect enough, so I didn't end up using it. And that was a topaz elemental, and I'll pull that down and show you in a second. So I have it right there. The other good thing about using a tinted sealer to paint these is, like I said, you're already putting the sealer on as you're painting it, but it also puts 2 or 3 layers of sealer on it, so they're pretty durable if you drop them. This is a topaz one that I did, and I didn't use enough, I felt like, of the color shift paint underneath the coats. Like I said, I probably could have gone over it again and then done some more touch up on it, but I felt like the emerald and sapphire and amethyst represented what I was trying to do a little bit better. Alright, it's a little tacky, but I feel like it's good enough to super glue this arm into here and finish this guy up. Okay, I'm just going to use some the original super glue and get a 2-pack at the Dollar Tree for $1. If you're ever gluing a heavier model and you feel like the super glue is just not going to be enough, you can also do baking soda in one part of the model, probably the cavity here, and then put super glue on this part that goes in, and once the two combine, creates an instant chemical reaction that creates a super bond and dries immediately. So that's what I use for doing larger models, like the big dragons that I've done in the past. And sorry about that scratching noise back there. That's my kid's rabbit. I'll just let that dry, and I'll glue the arm on the amethyst one in just a moment. And let's check this out. This feels pretty dry. That's a little tacky still, but good enough to go. That's it for a moment. Looks pretty close to being done, but I'll be honest, I'm probably going to do another coat or two of the tinted sealer on the amethyst. And I'm just going to glue this guy onto his base. And then after the other 2 coats are done on this one, I'll touch up the base down here, and then I'll glue him to his base, or it to its base rather. I should be live right now while this video is playing. So I hope you ask me any questions, and you can reach out to me at jollygoodgiant@gmail.com if you have any other questions in the future. Thank you, and have a great day.